Living in our deciduous woodland here, we've had lots of experience with designing shade beds. They come with challenges like any garden, but I think they are some of the most beautiful, enchanting gardens you can design. So today, I'm going to walk you through how to design and create a shade garden bed from scratch for color, foliage interest, pollinators, and we're going to be building one together in real time. Okay, we're here on the porch. The border in question is right down here. But before we get into our tips, I want to thank June's Journey for sponsoring today's video. June's Journey is a beautifully illustrated mystery game set in the glamorous 1920s, which I love. That Art Deco style is just So you follow June Parker, an amateur detective, as she uncovers secrets, solves puzzles, and reveals the truth behind her sister's murder. The main part of the game is these hidden object scenes. They're gorgeous, detailed locations where you have to find very specific items, and it's kind of like a visual treasure hunt. And June's Journey is genuinely the only game I have on my iPhone. I don't typically play games, but I love it. I started playing it a couple of years ago, and I still come back to it regularly when I really need that moment of relaxation after a long day in the garden, or I even use it sometimes for kind of like calming down, emotionally regulating when I'm feeling upset or frustrated. It's just a nice kind of peaceful, calm place to rest my mind before I kind of move on. And I can enter this little virtual world, my little virtual world, and help June solve mysteries. But one thing that surprised me is how much I've really enjoyed building my own little island estate as I progress through the story. I think it's because I like building things, I like making gardens, I like designing, and I can decorate the landscape, create a whole world that grows along with the mystery. There are also special events and seasonal content that keeps things interesting. So if you enjoy a little bit of mystery, a little bit of intrigue, beautiful visuals, and something to wind down with that's just the right kind of challenging, I highly recommend giving June's Journey a try. You can download June's Journey for free by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen right now. Thanks again to June's Journey for sponsoring the channel, and now let's get back to planting in that shady border. So if you are a beginner gardener and you're just getting started, the first step to creating any garden bed is going to be prepping the bed itself. So you want to prep the bed, decide on the borders, and then fill it in with goodness. You can always alter the borders later, if you want to make the bed deeper or kind of play around with the shape. But just to get started, it's very important to have a clearly defined border, an edge, a boundary for those plants, and to prep that bed with really great nutritious soil. This can be in the form of, compost, manure, fertilizer, mulch, garden soil, or leaf mold. So we are on the porch, and I just want to show you what the bed looks like from up here. So Bert prepped this bed. He added leaves, leaf mold, compost, and actual full leaves, like just took the full leaves without shredding them or anything and put them down. And that's actually a fantastic weed suppressant. If you're just starting a border for the first time, you want to just take anything that you can, any organic matter that you have, to just kind of bulk up the border. So let me show you what it looks like from the beginning. So once you have all that prepped, you want to have fertilizer at the ready to plant up your plants, especially for a shady woodland garden, because the established trees can really leach all of those nutrients out of the soil. So you want to be sure that you're giving all of your plants the goodness that they need. Okay, our second tip here is to really consider the light. Each shade border is gonna have very different lighting conditions, and often the bed itself will vary in terms of the light from one end to the other. All right, so now we just wanna take a look at the lighting in the bed. Now, in any woodland setting, things are just gonna shift. So what I would almost suggest is that you prep your bed and then just leave it for a couple of days and observe. Just observe the bed, see what it's looking like. So essentially, here's our back garden, there's our sunken garden, and here, this part of the bed gets morning sun. This middle part gets midday sun. And then this back part over here, or front part, depending, that gets later afternoon sun. So I'd say probably the shadiest part of the bed is right in the center. Yeah, that area there kind of gets the least amount of sun. And one of the reasons that we have more sun here than when we moved in is because we cleared a tree that was blocking all of that sun right there. So we cut that down. There was another tree right here. It had rotted from the inside and was starting to die. And just for safety, we cut that back. So that was kind of being covered. So now there's light coming in from there. And then the sun comes over here. And then we have this area that's lit by the sun through this little corridor toward the end of the day. There's Bert just doing some grooming. So essentially here, because it's afternoon sun and it's a larger portion, we can get away with some more sun lovers. And in the middle, we want to really focus more on our shade tolerant stuff. Shade lovers, we'll say. Shade is lovely, so we don't just need to tolerate it, but shade lovers. And then here, where we have more of that morning sun, we can do some things that are more sun lovers. Not full sun, but that are sort of like part shade. Our next tip is to think about the colors and the shapes of the foliage and flowers. One thing I always try to keep in mind when planting up a shady border is how the colors and shapes of foliage and flowers will work harmoniously together over time. In a space with less sunlight, flowers often play kind of more of a supporting role, especially in the midsummer season. So foliage really becomes the star, and you want to prioritize that in your shade borders. Plus, shade foliage is so gorgeous. So look for and think about contrasts. You know, you want to pair broad, lush hosta leaves with something more delicate, maybe like ferns or stilbes. And with foliage, any type of foliage in a garden, you want to think not just in terms of the shapes, but also in terms of color. You know, there's not just green, there are incredible, deep, rich burgundies, silver tone leaves, and even chartreuse that brighten up those, you know, dimmer corners and add depth to your garden. And it's fantastic that you can find so many of these for shade. Things like heucheras have a variety of different colors. Shiny silvers like lamium or brunnera. You can get chartreuse colors or yellows with your haconocloas, certain hostas, and the flowers of the alchemillamalis. And when flowers do come in, you know, like the white foxgloves or your pale purple astilbes, those colors will really shine in the shade. So it's worth placing them where they can really catch your eye in the border. Okay, so here are the plants that we bought specifically for this project. And we have a variety of different kinds of plants, some annuals, some spreaders, ground covers, and then some beautiful early spring interest here. But this one is the Pulmonaria, the silver bouquet. And that beautiful, vibrant color on the leaves really, really glows. It's so, so beautiful for those darker areas if you want to have that really bright plant that kind of catches your eye and draws you over to the side of the garden, which is what we're doing here. So this one is zone 4 through 8. It grows 8 inches tall, and it's sun to part shade. This one is gonna do really, really well in this location. Another perennial here is the dead nettle. And again, this is that like really soft, beautiful, silvery foliage. And this is also called lamium. And it has really beautiful flowers. So this is the pink pewter. So I think the tag makes it look white. I think that's just because it's faded. But I think it's more of a kind of a warmer pink. And then we have more of a purpley pink lamium that is fantastic. I want it all over the garden because it's really evergreen most winters. We've had one winter that it died all the way back, but most winters the lamium will stay that silvery color all throughout the winter. And it can do sun for us, it can do shade. It's deep, deep shade to part shade to full sun. It's just such a winner of a plant. The pollinators absolutely love the flowers, and that early spring flower is so helpful for the pollinators, but that's just a really gorgeous one that I want to have as our ground cover. They spread so quickly and easily, but they're not going to take over a space. You can very easily cull them out. And then look here at this interest. So we have this beautiful Rex begonia, and it's a darker foliage, but it does have that silver in the center. And then it has a margin of the burgundy. And then the underside of the leaves is burgundy. But that's just so, so pretty. So you could pair this with something that's vibrant green, or even pairing this with some of the flowers that we have here. So this Rockapulco wisteria double impatient. That would look so beautiful because it kind of picks up on the burgundy of the leaf and this sort of pinker kind of veining of the leaf with this purpley pink impatient. That's a really pretty pairing. And you also want to think about the shape of the leaves. You know, this kind of splayed out leaf of the begonia would be fantastic for something like these little dime shaped leaves here of this really beautiful Plectranthus. This smells incredible. So this is a proven accents, cerveza and lime. And it has that it smells just like lime, almost like a mojito. So like mint and lime. It's a really unique smell, and I think it's fantastic. I'm very excited for this one. This is full to part sun. So we can probably get away with this. We'll just be really careful about where we're placing it in this border, and we'll just see. It'll be an experiment. And then something that's like this, very deeply lobed Ipomea, sweet potato vine, ornamental sweet potato vine. You could pair this with something that, like we said, it's a burgundy, or you could do it with a really strappy leafed foliage. You could do something like a black mondo grass, or you could do it with a blue hosta that has really big leaves. You could do it next to something like a yew or a boxwood to create just that interest, pairing things together that have different foliage shapes, different structural shapes to the plants, maybe a wispy grass next to a really sturdy, upright fern, or next to a big broad-leafed hosta or pulmonaria, but just taking it all into consideration and kind of thinking about the pairings that you want to have. There's no rules about it. So you don't have to plant bright colored things in your shadier spots, and darker leaved things in your sun spots. It's just about kind of playing around with it and seeing what you want that space to do for you. But I think these do need some grooming.
So when I'm designing interiors, in a dark space, maybe there's a room that doesn't have much light, sometimes I like to counter that darkness and try to kind of fight it by brightening it up a bit, But most of the time, I kind of like to feel what the space is giving me and then use that for inspiration. And you can do the same thing for garden design. So for in a dark space in our home, I might drench it with a rich, dark, kind of cozy, moody color. And that makes you want to curl up and read a book. And so then I'll design everything with that feeling in mind. Dark wooden bookcases and really intricately carved armoires. And likewise, in a darker woodland border, you may want to plant some kind of dark foliage, some deep greens, and maybe some burgundies. And that way it can really kind of lend to the moody feeling of the space. And then just as I would add a really unique lighting fixture, like a vintage lamp for a pop of brightness, or like a painting or some kind of artwork to add that brightness in a darker corner, I might add some pops of color into the darker borders with really vibrant flowers. You know, like we talked about white foxgloves, like whites are really punchy. But you could also have super vibrant, rich colors of flowers and foliage. And you can do this with annuals, or you can do this with perennials. But just having that really punchy, bright foliage and flower accent is going to be so nice just to highlight in those darker spots. So as you plan your own shady spot, I would encourage you not to just think about what blooms when, but also think about the textures, the shapes, and the tones, and how they'll play together like a quiet little composition, even when nothing's in flower.
So here in our shady border, we have lots of early spring bloomers, and that's very typical of your shade lovers, is that they're gonna have really beautiful shows early in the year because they are accustomed to woodland gardens. So, you know, early in the spring, in a deciduous woodland, when you don't have any of the leaves on the trees, they're getting lots of sun. And it's just so wonderful to see this whole thing alive with blooms earlier in the season. The pulmonaria here has these beautiful pink, purple, and blue flowers. The geranium, the spessart, has white blooms that are so gorgeous. Catmint is not typically kind of considered a shade lover, but we have it in all of our shade borders, and it blooms beautifully, not as prolifically as in some of the other areas, but it still does really well, and it's doing that thing that I want with the foliage. The hostas have beautiful blooms that the butterflies and hummingbirds and bumblebees love, which are a little bit, you know, they bloom later in the season, as you can tell here. Those are in bloom now. But you have these astilbes here, bloomed a little bit earlier. And for winter interest, this beautiful ivory halo dogwood takes a lot of shade. It's so beautiful, red twigs, gorgeous, gorgeous, absolutely stunning shrub. I love it so much. And as you can see here, we have the ivory halos back here, so beautiful. But the fun thing about this is, you know, the ones that get sun are much bigger, but these ones still have that same bulk, that same weight, but they're just a little bit smaller, and you get the red twig interest all throughout. That's so fun. And we have hydrangeas here. You know, some hydrangeas can handle a lot more shade than others. This is a Pinky Winky hydrangea, and an oak leaf hydrangea is going to be a great one for a shadier border.
Now for our final tip, plant with variety in mind. When building a truly resilient and interesting shade border, variety really is your best friend. It's not just about filling the space, it's about layering life into it, season by season. So you can start by mixing your plant types, you know, shrubs, perennials, annuals. This is a very quintessential cottage garden style. And if you can add in some really well-behaved self-seeders and ground covers. Think of things like hardy geraniums or lamium for the spreaders. And then for the self-seeders, you can think of things like foxgloves and forget-me-nots. You know, these are gonna gently spread and kind of knit things together without taking over. And then try adding something structural like boxwood or yew, especially if you're living in a place with a long winter. That evergreen backbone makes everything feel grounded. Even when the rest of the garden is asleep, you still feel the sense of that garden waiting to come to life. And so there are a lot of early spring bloomers that love a shadier woodland garden, things like tiarella and pulmonaria and bleeding hearts and brunnera. So you can kind of shape the border with those in mind, just so you can make sure that you have your winter interest with some of those really beautiful evergreens, and then you have your spring interest with those kind of peppered throughout. And then layer in your summer stars too. Plants like hostas and lady's mantle, they bring beautiful texture, but they're also great for pollinators with their flowers. And even in the shade, you can still create a haven for bees and butterflies. Our bumblebees absolutely love everything about our shade border. And most of our garden is shady to some extent, and they just go crazy for it. So the other thing is to don't forget vertical space either. You know, a shade tolerant climber, like a beautiful climbing hydrangea or a taller shrub, can sort of soften fences or create a really nice backdrop. And of course, scent is a lovely bonus. So something like lily of the valley, and oh my gosh, woodland phlox. My favorite is the blue moon phlox. It's such a beautiful periwinkle, light lavender, lilac-y color, and the scent is one of my absolute favorites in the garden, a very sort of sweet pea scent for something that loves the shade. And the pollinators love it too. And these scents can really lift the space. So the more you layer in different bloom times, forms, and functions, the more your garden becomes a real living tapestry. It's not just beautiful, you know, it's dynamic, it's resilient, and it's full of quiet surprises. And you can see the form of the garden throughout the entire year instead of just having a bunch of flower power 1 month of the year. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and plant.
So we have a few roses, which it's not the ideal location for roses. They were here when we moved in. Just 3 roses planted there. The one on the end gets a lot of flowers, a lot of bloom power there. But the one in the middle gets hardly any. And the one at the end here is kind of covered by this. This is a native berry, and they actually cultivate this because the leaves are so beautiful. So this is actually like a species that you can purchase. I can't remember the name of it right now, but the bees absolutely love it. And I think the flowers are quite pretty, but the bees just love it. And Bert was saying it's sort of like a column of sound in there. There's sort of like a chamber where you can really hear the bees buzzing in there from the porch very loudly. You know, seeing how much the bumblebees love that, I think we're gonna leave that in for now and we'll just plant around it. I realized while I was looking at that we actually did remove that rose there. We transplanted that onto the hill. And so yeah, that's the reason we didn't get any roses there this year, is because there's not one there. But there are lily of the valley here, and that's a great one for scent. Oh my gosh. So that'll just come up naturally and kind of fill in this space. But let's go ahead and set stuff out. Bert's here to help. Okay. Looks like the border is starting to take some kind of shape. So let me show you where we place stuff. So we have here the plectranthus. Then we have our annual double impatient. We have our Rex begonia, the pulmonaria behind there. Those 2 foliage accents I think are gonna look really pretty together. Then we've repeated this double impatient. The other plectranthus is matching it on the other end. And then in the center here, we have the lamium. That's just gonna kind of fill in this whole space. The ipomea behind that, which hopefully will fill in that space. And the same thing repeated on this side. Now what we're gonna do is take the roses here and start to just weave them up through that lattice work. I think I just want them to kind of start to be climbers, and that way hopefully they can start to climb up over onto the railing of the porch. So hopefully they'll get a little bit more of that afternoon sun. But as you can see, there is some sun in the center climbing up. So maybe we will be able to plant some stuff. I think planting clematis ultimately along here is going to be a really good idea, because we could train it to go all the way onto the roof of the porch, honestly. And it'll really enjoy that sun, roots in the shade, face in the sun. But let's go ahead and put some gloves on and train these roses. Okay, so we've done just kind of a rough job of that. It's not the time of year to, really start the training process. It's gonna be a lot easier in the spring when it doesn't, when it's still dormant and you can kind of take things out. But for now, that's a good framework for this idea. Yeah, a lot of lateral branching to create that network because those roses are gonna form on those lateral branches. And then we have that rose there and then we have no rose there. So there we go. Nicely done.
Okay, Burr here, real quick. I just wanted to say something about leaf molds because this is pretty cool.
While I was training this rose, I found a bunch, like a little hub of worms. Well, they kind of all disappeared now. Oh, here's one. You see that? They've all gathered in and are creating like the most rich, beautiful soil right here with all those leaves that we put here the other day, which is awesome. That's so cool.
All right, now we're gonna go gather the ferns. So we're just walking through the woodland to try and find some really nice ferns. Look at our window boxes. There's an area near us that has tons of maidenhair ferns, which are probably my favorites. And we might do some Christmas ferns, like this one here. They're called Christmas ferns because the leaves, the little leaves, look like stockings. And those are evergreen. I thought they were called Christmas ferns because they're still green at Christmas, but it's because they look like stockings. We have some delicate ferns, so we'll get a few. This is like a whole fern glade over here. Yeah, it's a great one. All right, while Bert's digging up a few more ferns, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of our Canadian windflowers because I think that'll look so pretty to have those spread throughout. This is an anemone and it has these beautiful white blooms. They're so delicate and gorgeous, and they do dance in the wind. They're so, so beautiful. I love them. But this border just absolutely fills up with the Canadian windflower. And anywhere that we've transplanted it, it's filled up that area. They do spread really quickly and readily, so just keep that in mind. But I definitely do want to put some of these into our new border. Maybe we'll kind of wrangle some of them out of the path and in the areas that we don't want them and transplant them. So here we have tons of beautiful natives. We have native trilliums that we have on the property that are spectacular. Jack in the pulpit. We have the columbines, the Aquilegia canadensis, that they just grow wild and they're beautiful, beautiful cultivars that you can just transplant into your garden, just making sure you're being very respectful and not taking an entire clump of an area. But generally speaking, these are pretty common plants here in the Northeast, as are ferns. But again, with ferns, you want to be really careful that you're not taking too many ferns from one area. You just want to take a few and make sure that you always know which fern it is, because there can be rare species of ferns. So just be mindful of that. Make sure you're not moving any rare species of ferns and kind of disrupting a colony or removing a colony from an area completely. You got some good stuff, huh? Shopping on the property. Okay, so it's filling in pretty well. Obviously we have to, this was here before the soil, so we just have to sow some grass seed there to fill that area in. But We have everything laid out and we're gonna go ahead and get planting, but I just wanna show you quickly. Plectranthus, Canadian windflower, our double impatient, the Christmas fern, another fern from the property, pulmonaria, more anemones. So the anemones are gonna be here and here, and then repeated at the other end. Begonia, then we have some delicate ferns. Really beautiful. They stay pretty low to the ground, so we'll do 3 of those, or 4 of those in the center. Boom, 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 boom. More of the Christmas ferns are spread out like that, so it's all symmetrical from right about here. The borders are gonna be, it's gonna be the same repeated on either side. And I think that'll look really nice to have that repetition of the same interest. And then some larger ferns in the back, and then the anemones here, delicate ferns repeated. So I think everything's gonna look really cohesive and beautiful. And then I'm thinking we'll just spread some of the foxglove seeds in the back and forget-me-nots in the front. Okay, well, we planted everything and I had to get my sun hat because it's really getting some sun right now. Actually, the entire border has some dappled sun, and then the front of the border has some direct sun, which is really nice. So I just wanted to show you quickly what it's looking like, and then we're gonna mulch, and then I think we're just gonna give you a tour, a little tour of our new garden space. So everything's in. Looking happy, looking healthy. Now it's time to mulch. Okay, we've planted, we've mulched. Now I have some foxgloves that I'm just gonna go and harvest the seeds from. And we have some forget-me-nots. And then I think we'll just sprinkle those throughout the border in little X's. And then I think we'll show you what's going on. We did water it when the camera had died, so I think we'll come around and just do another water since it's getting a lot of sun. And we wanna make sure those ferns and everything just settles in really nicely. Okay, so here are some foxgloves that had died back. I'm gonna open some up so we can see how much there is in there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hundreds and hundreds per each one. So these are the seeds from the Camelot mix. My fingers are so dirty. But this is the seeds from the Camelot mix. Just one important thing to note, I'm handling these barehanded, but I'm definitely gonna wash my hands right after I'm done handling these, even before I do the forget-me-nots. So we'll take these over there and we'll spread them in a little X pattern. You just have to drizzle them kind of like that. And then you can weed around the X once they start to come up. Create X. And back here. Okay, I actually think I'm just gonna shake these in the back of the border, like far in the back of the border as well. Just hoping that it'll kind of spread throughout. Okay, one more. So we're all done with these. I'm gonna go wash my hands and then we're gonna do the forget-me-nots. Okay, so for these ones, we're gonna place these kind of in the front of the border, and we don't really have to do a shape with them.
Okay.
We know what they look like, the seedlings, but that is a good tip. Okay, you gotta hang around. Yeah, just kind of like pulling, stripping each of the stems, and then just kind of spreading it like that. And it would be fun after these annuals go to like transplant, you know, the geraniums and tiarellas, just divide and do that in the fall maybe. So this is just totally filled with really fun color. Yeah, and you could, for this, you could do a heuchera, so it's perennial.
Shanghai or whatever.
Yeah, Shanghai would be perfect. Come on in. Welcome to our new shade border. It's in a lot of sun right now, but that's fantastic. So it's the evening now. So this is like late afternoon, evening. It's around 5. So we just have this little bit of sun and then it's just gonna go behind the mountain. So they're getting a nice bit of sun in the afternoon, almost the entire way through the end of the bed, which is fantastic. And there's just, I'm so excited with how much we were able to put in here. You know, one of the benefits of doing it at this time of year, which it's July, is that we were able to really make this a budget gardening video. We got all of the annuals half off, and we invested in a few of the perennials, you know, some of the spring lovers that I think are going to be fantastic, like the lamium and specifically the pulmonaria, the lungwort here. So starting over on this side, we have this beautiful plectranthus. Love how this smells. Oh my gosh. The leaves on that are just so unique. It's such a really interesting scent on that. And then we have our anemones, the Canadian windflower here, put in our ferns. We've left up the wild berries there. I'll have to remember what those are called exactly. They're not the black raspberries. Obviously they're not black, but there's something I can't remember. But yeah, we've left those now just because I don't have the heart with the pollinators to get rid of them. Here we have our Rocapolco double impatient, which I forgot to clean this one up. That's okay. Mulched it all. Oh, I was weeding in the path in the cottage garden, and I was picking some of our wild violas, and I just ended up, I put them in my pocket and I was going to throw them in the compost pile, and then I just came over here and they had a lot of roots on them, so I just plucked them in. So even if one of them takes, that'll sort of spread throughout and be a nice little early spring bloomer. Same with the foxglove. We just weeded that and placed it there. So we'll see how that transplants. Beautiful pulmonaria, the lungwort there. Lovely Rex begonia. Some of these beautiful ferns, low growers, and then a repetition. Our gorgeous Christmas ferns, and then back here, these really lacy, beautiful ferns that get 2 to 3 feet tall, our ipomoeas, and then the roses that we've trained, and then just that repetition, continuation. So we have the ipomoea and the lamium there, then the ferns, the double impatiens, more ferns, pulmonaria, begonia, anemones, all the way down to the end. But here's something interesting. So I was talking about trilliums. There are so many trilliums down where we were harvesting or foraging for the ferns. So Bert accidentally pulled one up when he was grabbing a fern, which was perfect because then we could plant it there. I think that's either a trillium or a jack-in-the-pulpit, but we have tons of those on the property. But I know that the jack-in-the-pulpit is a type of trillium. So either way, we'll have something really pretty there. And then more anemones, and then the plectranthus here. These are so cute. I love the thick, fuzzy leaves and that scent. You know I love a scented leaf. So this is just so much fun. All right, well, that's it. I will keep you updated on how this looks throughout the rest of the season, but I'm so excited with how it all came together. The only thing I'm curious about is whether or not these roses are gonna get the kind of light that they want, but you know what? We transplanted one, didn't do well, so we'll just see how they do. And if they don't like it, then we'll go ahead and put something else there. That's the beautiful thing about gardening. You can always change things up. And I think, honestly, we have 2 climbing hydrangeas in the back of the property, like on the back of the house. And I think having climbing hydrangeas all along here would be beautiful, climbing all the way up onto the roof of the porch. So thank you so much for joining us. Like this video if you like, subscribe if you're not already. It really does help us out. And don't forget to check out June's journey. I will leave that linked below. All right, I'll see you very soon. Bye and happy gardening.
Before you go, don't forget to check out June's journey using the link below or the QR code on the screen. Thanks again for watching.